Hello, good evening and welcome to Thursday's Midlands Today from the BBC. Drivers are still having to pay to retrieve cars from wheel clampers a year after the government pledged to make the practice illegal. Trading standards officers in Birmingham say they're frustrated that drivers are still being forced to hand over hundreds of pounds in cash.
The city remains one of the worst areas in the country for clamping, and it'll be at least May next year before powers are introduced to outlaw clamping on private land. Bob Hockenhull has been investigating.
Midday today, another seized car arrives at the Clampers compound. It's a situation Afifa Batul from Spark Hill in Birmingham is all too familiar with. 2 weeks ago, she and her brother had to hand over £430 to get their car back when it was towed away.
It's disgusting because literally within 10 minutes, my brother's car had been clamped and towed. And the other couple's car had been clamped, and they said they went over the road for literally 2 minutes.
It was this car park in Kings Heath where the family had parked for a few minutes.
There was a car blocking the parking meter just there.
They didn't notice the pay and display signs.
What's also confusing for the motorist is that this car park is next to another car park where the pay and display signs are more clearly shown and where there's no way that a driver would incur such a high penalty in such a short time.
We've had experience where a customer bought a ticket, he didn't realise that they was 3 minutes over and he's got clamped still. And we found that it's affecting business in the local area as well.
Last August, the government announced wheel clampers were to be banned from operating on private land. Birmingham City Council had been calling for the ban for years and is frustrated that 12 months later it's still not in force.
I have recently written another letter to government here today asking them to move as quickly as they can to protect motorists from this extortion and intimidation that they are still suffering throughout the country.
Midway Parks is responsible for a lot of clamping in Birmingham. I went to their compound. The manager didn't want to go on camera but told me he saw no reason to stop clamping until it is outlawed. While I was there, another driver turned up to pay £450 to retrieve her car.
I didn't find out and the police didn't even know, and I didn't know where my car was till like 9:30 this morning, so like 12 hours later, and that's why it's that expensive.
Until May next year, when the practice is finally due to be outlawed, it's a case of drivers beware. Bob Hockenhull, BBC Midlands Today, Birmingham.
Well, we're joined now from our London studio by Edmund King from the AA. A very good evening to you, Mr. King.
Good evening.
The government promised a new law on this last year, didn't they? It looks like that law won't come in now until next spring. So why do you think it's taking so long?
Well, the legislation was actually introduced in the House of Commons on February the 11th this year in the Protection of Freedoms Bill. And I think, unfortunately, it's just the way the parliamentary process works. I mean, I gave evidence to the Scrutiny Committee in the House of Commons, and I did make the point that since the announcement to outlaw wheel clamping on private land, which we very much welcome and have campaigned for about 10 years, but since then, there is evidence from Birmingham and elsewhere that many clampers are drinking in the Last Chance saloon and trying to cash in, and basically clamping as many vehicles as possible before they're outlawed.
Indeed. Mr. King, I'm just going to come in because we are running out of time. I do want to say, though, I mean, I understand that we've seen people being charged hundreds of pounds on our programme, but sometimes there is a need, isn't there, for car clamping? You know, obviously not charging excessive amounts, but to prevent people parking on private land that is needed access at all times, say.
Well, yes, people shouldn't park just where they want to park, but I think in this day and age, clamping a vehicle is quite a barbaric move, and the problem is there are no restrictions on the prices charged, so many people do get exploited and ripped off. In Scotland, they outlawed wheel clamping on private land in 1991, and landowners have found other ways, like putting up a gate, putting up a barrier, of actually stopping people parking illegally. So I think the sooner the better this menace is removed from the roads, it will be better for all.
OK, Mr. King, thanks very much indeed for talking to us.